As we've learnt, Neil Bath and Jim Fraser are set to leave the football club after over 20 years of service here. And I guess the conversation now is, what is the current direction now for Cobham and the academy? In today's video, I want to have a conversation. So if you're thinking I'm going to be saying clear leg this, bowley that, Igbali that, whatever, I'm not here for that. Yes, on Twitter, I can be reactive. I don't think I'm that crazy, but on my platform, I'm more responsible and I want to have balanced conversations where we see things from all aspects. So I want you guys to understand the context for today's video. It's not going to be some hit piece or any other nonsense like that. I think we should have a genuine conversation on the direction of the academy. So share your thoughts and opinions, of course, hit that like button and get involved in this conversation. And let's make it as balanced and nuanced as possible. So let's get straight into things. Let's start with the news first. And as we know, Neil Bath and Jim Fraser are set to leave the football club. Now, if you guys are unaware about the role they played, they were essentially the ones tasked with creating and developing a world-class academy. But Roman Abramovich pumped all that money into developing and investing in creating Cobham. He said, I need to have a world-class academy, and Neil Bath and Jim Fraser helped co-found and produce that, and it's culminated in massive career highlights like having 7 academy grads involved in the squads in that Champions League win against Man City. So a lot of good work has come from that, and a lot of that work has really benefited us in times of desperate need in the market and when we have those transfer bans. So it's handy for clubs of our size to have big academies, of course, that can supplement the first team when they're needed. But to stick with the news for now, this story was first broken by Chelsea Youth. And if you guys are unaware about who he is, he's a Twitter account who is essentially synonymous with all things Chelsea Academy. I've always been curious about who this mystery figure is because he clearly has some pretty big ties, is very in the know, very well connected. Who knows if someone will ever spill the beans around him? Probably not, though, to be fair. Once Chelsea Youth broke the story, other outlets like Sky Sports and big outlets in this country also confirm his departure as well too. So I'm saying that to let you guys know that this guy has clout, and when he reports something, always is right. But at the time of recording this video, there has been a farewell message from Neil Bath on Chelsea's website, with Neil Bath essentially saying, after 30 years working at Chelsea, I feel like it is the right time for me now to have some time off and take a break away from the job I put so much time into. I intend to rest and have some time away from the game. However, I will continue working over the coming weeks to ensure a smooth transition for this organization. Of course, he spoke about how proud he was, developing the players, relationship with staff, parents, colleagues, etc., etc. You guys can read that for yourself. There'll be a link to that in the description. So I guess this farewell confirms the fact that Neil Bath really did just need a break right now. But the timing is pretty interesting, and Chelsea Youth, to stick on him again, he confirmed a story suggesting that maybe this isn't the reality behind Neil Bath deciding to leave the football club. He reposted a tweet suggesting that maybe Neil Bath felt like he had to leave the club when his longtime colleague in Jim Fraser was essentially told, you're not needed anymore. We've recently hired players in recruitment level like Sam Jewell, Joe Shields, and they're more intrinsically tied to the new ownership and the new hierarchy at this football club. So naturally you think to yourself, what clout would a Jim Fraser have under a new organization like this? Regardless, it seems like Neil Bath, as the tweet alludes to, wasn't happy to see his longtime colleague treated like this, and he decided if he's going, then I'm definitely going. But let's keep things real, of course. When stories like this get announced, you'll get your corporate PR responses because the organization is more important and things must be smooth. But with fan channels and social media and stuff like that, we can discuss some of the insights behind the scenes to get more of that real take on, oh, this is what really went down. But you know what? You guys decide what you believe. You're your own individual. You don't have to listen to me. Follow your own gut on what you think the reality is. But I find the timing of this news a bit iffy because Neil Bath was the one, promoting this Project 2030, this infamous project that we're putting tons of groundwork in to get ready for a future in which we are hoping to dominate the the football landscape. On top of that, he did have a new role. On top of that, he was given a promotion and was appointed as the Director of Football Development and Operations only 2 years ago. And when he was appointed at that level, he was allowed to sign talents he thought the club had to buy. In came guys like Cesare Casada, in came guys like Carney Chukwuemeka, and a handful of other players too. You think to yourself though, with all the transfer stories that we read, the players that we're linked with, the talents that are linked with this football club, it's quite clear that they're coming now from, different people in the hierarchy. It's coming from the recruitment team, it's coming from your Shields, it's coming from your Winston Lees, your Stewarts, etc, etc. You think to yourself, where is the place really in this new hierarchy for a Neil Bath and for a Jim Fraser? Regardless, their soon-to-come departure does kind of reflect the passing of the torch right now, because they're some of the final legacy figures at this football club, with a few more set to leave. And once they all leave, we are definitely in uncharted waters. We are in a different Chelsea era, with new staff, new hierarchy, new everything. I mean, even today, Matt Law revealed that longtime Chelsea masseuse and Manuel Ribeiro is leaving us to go to Arsenal after being here since 2009. So it seems like any type of institutional knowledge that we were still holding on to will now be gone before the new season starts. And it seems like the club now have their own personal vision they are looking to promote. And I'm not here to say that it's awful. I mean, my God, we've just signed Kendry Pires. We've signed Esteval Willian 10 years ago. If players like this were on the market, I would have known instantly in my heart we had no chance of signing them because they didn't want to come here. So that is a positive of what this new model is introducing to the football club. And this is what I mean by you need to be balanced with this, because I don't think it's necessarily good versus bad or, good versus evil. I kind of get the model in the sense that if you're splashing like premium money on talents, the benefit is that their wage packets come at very reduced fees, right? If you're signing a player for that same equivalent at like maybe 27 years old, the additional charge comes from agent fees. It comes from having to pay more premium contracts. And we're quite clearly looking to dramatically reduce our wage bill, where over time, when players develop hopefully to the standards we want to see, their wage packets will rise depending on their value for the team. I don't necessarily think that's a bad model to implement. I think there is something good behind this. Still though, for the second part of this conversation, we've learned reports from many big outlets in this country that it seems like under this new ownership, we may have a different strategy now for our academy and the direction we want to land it right now. And it seems to maybe have a lot of influence from what is happening at Man City, in the sense that we want to create more stronger intrinsic ties between the youth academies and all the different youth groups, with the model basically consisting of however the first team is playing, that way of playing will be implemented in every single age group at the club at an academy level. On paper, it's not necessarily a terrible idea, right? You think to yourself, okay, if we want players who are ready to play in our first team, then surely it makes sense for them to understand what it's like to already play with those first team ideas in their heads from younger age groups. Look at clubs like Barcelona, a rich history of over 50 years since Johan Cruyff developed his total football there, and look at the life it's taken on its own. I mean, we're currently witnessing the birth of another teen sensation and potentially another footballing great in the making in Lamine Yamal. Players like this can only get born and can only be witnessed when they come through models of really deep football cultural ties like this. Focusing on that Man City inspiration, I mean, Man City are coming off the cusp of finally producing their great golden generation. Guys like Oscar Bob, Cole Palmer, Romeo Lavia, Rico Lewis, and a few other talents scattered across their team. And since then, they've gone on a mini golden spree of their own of securing PL2 titles and of course under 18 division titles as well too. Man City originally gained inspiration from us in terms of developing their model, their academy, and putting a lot of groundwork and investing a lot of time into creating the teams you're currently seeing at Man City. Us, on the other hand, from an under 18 to under 21 level, we aren't necessarily hoovering up all the silverware like we used to do during that golden 10-year spell. But that's kind of how football works. And there is some context as to why that hasn't necessarily been as sustainable on a silverware success level. But to explain that, we need to understand that mini cultural shift within the academy in terms of how we've come to this moment. And essentially, we have to think about our original golden generation. In my opinion, the best Chelsea youth squads I've seen, and I still compare all the existing youth squads to. And that was a team that included your Rubens, your Christensens, your Bogers, your Masundas, your Solankis, your Tammy Abrahams. You know, they were scoring goals for fun. They dominated, and they played the type of football where no team at a youth level could really compete. And we got some incredible accolades from all the best youth coaches from across Europe. I mean, it really was a golden generation. But one of the disappointing things about that generation was that we didn't really tap into that as best as we could have and really cultivate the talent that we produced. During that time, of course, the first team, which still to this day to a degree, was completely alien to anything happening and other factors in the club, with the club constantly hiring a short-term manager and a Conte or Mourinho that only had their own personal goals, which understandably they were set to have. There was no real pathways for any of these young talents to really get minutes in the first team. On top of that too, the main thing was loan spells didn't necessarily work out for the best talents, and this was quite confusing because we had some of the best talents for their ages across Europe, and a lot of them struggled out on loan. And that was down to a multitude of reasons. It came down, for example, Jeremy Boga. He's getting loan moves all the time. And at his loan clubs, he's working under 3 or 4 managers per season because there's non-stop sackings and hires and sackings and hires. But the main thing was that for all the talent these guys had, they weren't necessarily able to showcase that at the clubs we loaned them out to, because those clubs didn't play that same football these players were brought up playing together. And it then becomes a question of how prepared are they to really tackle the demands of professional men's football, where you might have to play for a team that are pumping the ball long. Can you adapt? Can you still play? Can you still find your way? And during that initial stage of our first golden generation, we made quite a lot of mistakes. And I think that was accepted at a club level where it's like, okay, we need to work on this. We need to find ways to make sure that our talents will thrive. And one of the best solutions was a mini cultural shift on creating a more adaptable player. Adaptable in the sense that they can play to a high level, playing under many different tactical setups and tactical systems. They had to be comfortable playing in a multitude of positions because in their young careers, a manager may feel like you're better at left back or at left wing. If that's the case, you must be able to cope. And ultimately, there was a willingness to increase the physical capacity of the player to get them ready even more for the professional men's game. And out came players like your Reece Jameses, your Mason Mounts, Livermentos, Lewis Halls. I mean, there's so many players to list, but this change brought phenomenal success because the main focus was we are creating a level of player ready for first team football demands, for professional demands. And I think we witnessed that with the abundance of players that we're seeing playing in top divisions, playing in Europe, playing for national teams. It's one of the main things that's made our players so attractive to most clubs because they know they're set to get ready-made players who are instantly ready to take on whatever challenges their new clubs need them for. I mean, honestly, the depth of talent that we produced, I mean, we forget your Nathan Ake's playing for Man City, Christensens. I mean, there's so many examples where in a different alternate universe, we had clearer pathways into the first team. We utilise a lot of the great talents we've been producing for fun. And maybe we save on millions because we don't then replace these talents for sideways moves that aren't necessarily upgrades on the players we've let go. But that's a conversation for another time. But regardless, this new ownership has really profited from selling Cobham grads for pure profits, as we all know, with pure profit basically being, listen, there's no transfer fee attached to them. They're coming straight from the club. All they have is their wages. That's why it's a pure profit. It's nothing crazier than that. And I'd like to personally think that with us directly benefiting from this great model that pre-existed this new ownership, you would think that they would see the value in enhancing what already exists. I mention that point because now we're on the cusp of great generations coming through. Of course, after we profited from players like your Reece Jameses and Coles come into the first team, once we sold some of our top talents like your Lewis Halls and Livermentos and talents like that, and on top of the fact that some top team prospects we had like Musiala and a few others left us quite early, you could understand why maybe we didn't necessarily maintain the high level set before because we didn't necessarily have that level of player in the academy anymore. But right now, from an under 18 level and lower, we're on the cusp of more great players coming through. So for myself, it's even more important now that you like to think you enhance what you have, because some of these players may have squad roles, they may be first team players, or they may generate millions for us. That's going to help us out in the market. So then it goes back to the insistence of maybe following Man City's model. Is it necessarily best for us to create youth teams that play exactly how the first team play, when I would say we still don't know how the first team are set to play? And it goes back to Man City first gaining inspiration from us in terms of how we built and create our own academy, taking inspiration, but then improving things in their way. With the main thing being, we will complete things in stages. When the first team has shown they are ready to dominate, we can invest more time now in the academy, and we can get them ready to play the way the first team plays, and that can then just trickle down over the years and generations at this football club. Us, on the other hand, if there's one criticism of the student ownership, it's how aggressive we are with change, how aggressive they force things when we haven't borne fruit of any seeds that we've planted at all yet. And because we haven't seen that, it creates something for me personally where I do like a little bit of confidence. I do like a little bit of faith, because real life obstacles can come your way and they can really dramatically affect your future plans and your future visions. When the first team still hasn't been finalized, is it right for us now to tackle on revamping a youth team before implementing what we have to do at a first team level? For myself, I would be more understanding and more comfortable knowing that there is a vision in place where eventually we'll decide, you know what, we want to make sure that the first team are playing this way, and that will trickle down to all age groups at the club. I think that's a good thing. My only thing is, I think this comes with time and a degree of patience. Let's hope that Maresca can get things right. He's been giving a long-term contract, but there's a lot of pressure on him straight off the bat to finally be the one to make sense of this grand vision and really start kicking it into life now. If we unfortunately, and fingers crossed we don't, miss out on CL football again, will the club decide to kick Maresca out the door and hire a new manager, because they've shown since they've taken over that is one thing they haven't changed. When they criticize Roman for doing the same thing during his leadership at this football club, Man City have created the opportunity for them to now venture out into mastering other aspects at their club, their youth model, their multi-network model, which is now starting to show fruits of labor of, you know what, we are now producing a player that can come to our first team. And I think Savio, who had an excellent season at Verona last season, is testament to that. Us, on the other hand, we don't even know if players like an Andre Santos or others are guaranteed to remain there on loan again, whereas players coming from City's networks will be at a club for at least 2 years. In terms of transfer value generated between both clubs, they're starting to now match each other a little bit. Maybe most of Chelsea's players are exceeding at a higher level, playing for, bigger clubs, doing more things, but Man City's players have been able to command some premiums, at least. I guess most notably with Joe Shield's time at Southampton, where he spent a lot of money, signed Man City prospects that he knew, and to be fair, a lot of those guys played big parts in helping Southampton gain promotion from last season. So there is clearly something behind this model. But this was something that Man City cultivated, knowing that patience was needed and time was needed, whereas us, on the other hand, were letting institutional figures leave that were supposedly the figureheads, the spearheads of Project 2030. And it's quite evident now that whatever that project is will be out the door, because there is something new in place here, which clearly is exciting, hence by your signing your Hughes, your Esteval Williams, your Kendry Pazes, but it doesn't involve anything that pre-existed at this club before. And with aggressive change does come a lot of worry from players, from parents. They feel like the club isn't what it used to be from their time there. The values of the club are changing from why families and players even decided to come to Chelsea to begin with. And I think that's something that must be addressed. And I think for once we must try and create a smoother transition into new waters, into uncharted territories. I'm not afraid of change, not at all. I'm afraid of how you implement that change, how you develop that, how you master that. It's not just change for the sake of it. It has to be incrementally leading from one stage to the next, to the next, to the next. And I think at the moment, we just haven't seen enough evidence of that outside of ambitious attempts in the market, signing exciting players and big money players. To give my own personal view, I think it's a shame that we didn't tap into enhancing what exists here, because I think there was a possibility for your super talents like Esteval Willian and Kendrick Pies to coexist alongside your Caicedos and your Enzo Fernandez's, alongside utilizing academy players that you possess, instead of maybe giving those opportunities to expensive squad players who aren't necessarily upgrades on the level of talent that was being produced here. I think the most successful things in life involve respecting the past whilst being prepared for the future and kind of intertwining the two. And I first got this understanding of that. I don't know if you guys watch this show on Netflix called Chef's Table, where it would be like documenting the 10 best chefs in the world, and they document their process of how they got there. And you really got like this psychological understanding of how they found their personal success to find the positions they found themselves in. And a lot of that came from respecting recipes of the past and bringing them back into the future. It was that combination of the two that really opened my mind and gave me that perspective. Man City's model is rightfully finding success now because they've invested a lot of time into that. I need to see if we can do the same thing. Yes, they're getting success from like a trophy level, but then you could argue some of their squads at a PL2 level are a bit older compared to squads we've used, because when you're 18 years old, that's when you're making your first breakthrough into the men's game. That's how we develop our youth players to get ready for what really matters, becoming a professional football player. So if you're an exciting talent, you're not going to be in our youth rankings for that long, up until like a PL2 level. You're probably playing PL2 football or under 21 or whatever from by the time you're like 16 years old. That's how we look to use our academy. And I feel like I had to mention that point, maybe on a personal one, because I don't know, sometimes I fall in these traps in social media of maybe engaging in arguments I don't have to, because I go into them thinking, you know, the point you're making about the club isn't necessarily correct, or it's not the right context, or you're getting this wrong, or you're being disingenuous. But, you know, I have to accept that social media is just the cesspool it is. And, you know, I'm lucky that I can have like a platform like this where I can try, mellow down and have the conversations I actually want to have without any of the drama or the agenda stuff that is littered online. And I feel like I'm saying this yet again. I'm going into another situation with blind hope and optimism that things get right, that things work out. I learned a valuable lesson during that January window when you signed your Mudricks and Enzos, where I just assumed now that players are coming in, I think we're destined to get CL football. The season's been saved. But the reality was we've blown the squad to like a 35-man squad, and it's become impossible to coach a team effectively at that level. And I feel like, you know, theory and reality has constantly been the thing that is stopping us from getting where we need to be. And I think we have to start finding that fusion of both now if we're set to become this super club that all of us are hoping we can see within our lifetime. So my friends, I'm Nini FC. This is BlueLionsTV. I'll see you guys all soon.